Story 1. The air in St. Jude's was the consistency of thick velvet, heavy with the cloying sweetness of lilies and the sharp, chemical tang of embalming fluid. It clung to the back of Elias Thorne's throat, making every breath feel like a shallow act of sacrilege. Elias was the youngest of the 6 pallbearers, a necessity enforced by the late Arthur Blackwood's will, a final, spiteful directive ensuring his estranged grandnephew had one last obligation to fulfill. He stood now in the nave, shoulders aching before they had even begun, staring at the mahogany behemoth that contained the last physical remains of the cruelest man he had ever known. Arthur Blackwood's wealth was legendary, but so was his malice. It was rumored he hadn't just amassed a fortune, he had stolen it, piece by piece, soul by soul, from rivals and family alike. The eulogy, delivered by a distant cousin, droned on, a saccharine lie painting Arthur as a pillar of industry and quiet charity. Elias felt the familiar heat of resentment rise, but suppressed it. He was here only to carry the box, take his inheritance, if there was one, and finally bury the past. And now, as we prepare to lay Arthur to his final rest, let us remember the dignity and strength he embodied, right until the very end. The organ swelled, a profound, mournful vibration that rattled the stained glass windows. This was their cue. Elias exchanged silent, sweat-damp glances with the other 5 men. They were all older, associates of Arthur, their faces worn by business dealings and secrets. Old Mr. Davies, directly across from Elias, had a look of particular, almost frantic anxiety. Elias braced himself, sliding his hand under the brass handle on the lower side. The polished mahogany was cold and slick with the ambient humidity. 1, 2, 3, whispered Mr. Davies, his voice tight. They lifted. The weight was immediate, crushing, and wrong. It was not just the weight of Arthur Blackwood, a man of moderate size, plus the heavy, lead-lined casket. It felt like something immovable, something geological, as if they were lifting a granite tombstone, not a wooden box. Elias's spine protested instantly. He adjusted his grip, wincing. Easy, Elias, hissed Mr. Davies, his face pale. Keep it steady. Elias nodded, unable to speak, focusing only on maintaining the illusion of smooth transit. They turned slowly, navigating the narrow gap between the front pews. Then, through the thickness of the mahogany and the oppressive organ music, Elias heard it. A faint, dry, scraping sound. Scratch, scritch, scritch. It was low and intermittent, like a moth trapped inside a drawer, but utterly distinct. Elias's stomach lurched. He tightened his grip, trying to convince himself it was the flexing of the wood, or perhaps the rustle of the silk lining shifting on the descent. They paused at the church doors, bathed in a sudden shaft of weak autumn sunlight. What's the matter, son? Asked Mr. Harrison, the pallbearer at the front, his voice a low rumble. Nothing, sir, Elias lied, his voice thin. Just heavier than I expected. Arthur always was a weighty man, Harrison grunted, and they moved forward. As they passed through the doors and into the quiet procession line, the organ music faded behind them, replaced by the hushed whispers of the onlookers. Now, with the acoustic interference gone, the sound from within the casket was clearer, sickeningly intimate. It was fingernails on wood. Not a quick, panicked flurry, but slow, methodical scratches, as if someone was desperately trying to locate a weak point in the prison. Elias risked a glance at Mr. Davies. Davies' eyes were wide, darting from the casket to Elias, then back. His mouth was a thin, gray line. He had heard it, too. Elias tried to signal with a slight shake of his head, a silent question. What is that? Davies didn't answer with his eyes. He answered with his grip. His knuckles were bone white against the brass, holding the handle with an almost manic intensity, as if letting go would unleash something terrible. The pallbearers were nearing the waiting hearse, a long, black vehicle that looked like a sleek, patient predator. The scratching stopped. A wave of relief, cold and dizzying, washed over Elias. It was just the mechanism settling, the silk shifting, the imagination. But then, the weight changed. It didn't lighten. It shifted, as if the contents, the body, had rolled slightly inside the closed box. The momentary, terrifying shift nearly pulled the handle from Elias's grasp. The heavy corner dipped a sickening few inches. "Hold!" shouted Harrison, his composure finally breaking. The entire procession froze. The 6 men held the casket suspended over the damp lawn. From inside, there was a heavy, sodden thud, followed by a low, desperate sound. It wasn't a scratch or a rustle. It was a wet, rasping gasp. It was the sound of air being brutally dragged across a throat that should not require air. Davies let out a strangled, soft noise, somewhere between a whimper and a curse. He looked at Elias, and in his eyes, Elias saw not confusion, but absolute, terrified confirmation. Davies leaned in close to Elias, his lips barely moving. "The key, Elias." He had the key with him. He insisted. Elias frowned. "What key?" "The safe deposit box. The one with the box of ironwood. The thing he stole." Davies' voice was ragged, catching in his throat. "It was buried with him. That's why he's fighting, Elias. It's not him. It's what he took." The realization hit Elias with the force of a physical blow. The old rumors of Arthur's illicit fortune weren't about money. They were about an artifact, something dark and potent that Arthur, in his final, grasping paranoia, had tried to take into the grave. The casket began to vibrate, a low, internal shudder that grew quickly into a frantic, hammering motion. Thump, 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 thump. The lid was flexing. A tiny, dark hairline fracture that ran along the lower edge of the casket began to weep a viscous, brownish-red moisture. It smelled like rich loam and something metallic. The crowd of mourners, seeing the casket tremble violently in the pallbearers' hands, started to gasp and recoil. A few women screamed, their delicate composure shattered. "Get it to the hearse!" roared Harrison, straining under the impossible weight. Now, Davies was hyperventilating, his eyes fixed on the weeping fracture. "We can't hold it. He knows. He knows we're here." The noise inside intensified into a frantic, booming struggle, a violent, internal earthquake. A sound Elias would never forget. The wood splintering, followed by a raw, inhuman snarl that was only slightly muffled by the thickness of the box. Elias had to choose. Drop the handle and flee, or hold the line. If the casket hit the ground, if it broke open, whatever was inside, whether it was the resurrected malevolence of Arthur Blackwood or the entity tethered to his stolen artifact, would be loose. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, Elias planted his feet. He met Mr. Davies' terrified gaze and screamed, "Push!" They pushed the casket forward, a desperate, shuddering 6-man effort, sliding the massive box onto the rollers of the hearse. The moment the weight was taken by the vehicle, the struggle inside seemed to halt, as if the connection to the earth had been severed. The silence that followed was far more terrifying than the noise. The driver, his face gray with shock, slammed the back door shut, the latch clicking with horrifying finality. He scrambled into the driver's seat and sped away, leaving the entire funeral party standing in stunned, trembling silence. Elias stood there, his arms shaking, his skin crawling with the cold sweat of primal fear. He looked down at his right hand. Where his knuckles had pressed against the wood, a thin, dark streak remained. He wiped it off on his trousers, but before he did, he realized it wasn't condensation or mud. Embedded just under his thumbnail was a tiny, sharp fragment of dark, polished mahogany. And adhering to that tiny splinter, like a dark fingerprint, was a smear of fresh, wet blood. Arthur Blackwood may have been buried, but whatever he had stolen, and whatever force now possessed his corpse, was definitely not resting. And Elias had just helped carry the struggle to its next location. He looked around at the faces of the other pallbearers. Harrison was pale, muttering a prayer. But Mr. Davies simply stared at the vanishing hearse, his chest heaving, his eyes holding a stark, chilling message for Elias: it's only just begun. Story 2. The dark was not the real issue, it was how hard it was to fight. Lena drove for hours, pushing a truck full of fresh meds across the flat, wide lands. Past midnight, the road was just a black wall. Her coffee tasted burnt, and the soft, quick sound on the radio started to sound like people talking. She felt like giving up, ready to stop, when a light showed up. It was one light, a neon sign bleeding red and soft yellow into the deep dark. The all-night special. Lena felt a huge sense of relief. It was an old-style diner, sitting back from the road on a dirt path. The metal was dull, and the sign jumped a bit, but seeing it felt like finding clean water in a dry land. She drove her heavy truck into the empty lot. The air outside was thick and still, smelling only of wet dirt and truck fuel. The inside was too bright. Long lamps hummed high up, lighting up red seats, a long metal bar, and one woman behind it. The diner was oddly empty. Lena was the only guest. The server, who looked old but hard to place, had gray hair pulled back tight and wore a clean, pale green work dress. Her name tag read, Alara. Her face was empty, as smooth as bone, yet it seemed to hold a deep, old tired look. Coffee? Alara asked, her voice flat, with no feeling. Yes, please. As black as you can make it. Alara did not go to the pot. She just held a cup out, and Lena watched, feeling uneasy, as the dark liquid seemed to fill itself from the air right over the cup. The coffee was, in a strange way, just right. Strong, very hot, and tasting only of good coffee beans. Lena sat by the bar, enjoying the heat, watching the old music box in the corner skip slowly. It played the first 3 notes of a sad country song over and over. Oh, the road is long, and the sun is, skip. Oh, the road is long, and the sun is. As she finished her cup, another truck came into the lot. It was a dark blue big rig, just like hers, worn in the same way. Alara looked at the clock. A big, bright light ring that read 3:17 a.m., and then back at Lena. That's $4.50, she said. Lena paid, feeling tired again as the coffee's heat left her. Thanks, Alara. You saved me. Alara blinked slowly. Go safe. Lena got back in her truck. She felt good, ready for the last bit of her drive. She drove onto the empty road, setting her speed steady. She drove for what seemed like 2 full hours. The road went straight and curved, the mile signs counting down in the same slow way. Then, she saw it. The familiar, single light in front. She frowned. The light was too close for how far she had come. She slowed down, pulling near, and felt a cold prickle start at the back of her neck. The sign, the dirt lot, the jumping neon, the all-night special, it was all the same. No way. She had passed this place. It was far from town. There should not be another one close by. Thinking it had to be a twin diner, a strange chance, she pulled into the lot again. Inside, Alara stood behind the bar, perfectly still. "Coffee?" Alara asked, her voice the same flat sound. I just had some," Lena said, sitting on the same red seat. "About 2 hours ago. Down the road." Alara blinked. "I've been here all night, ma'am. I did not see you." Lena looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. The music box played the exact same 3 notes. "Oh, the road is long, and the sun is," a sense of deep fear started to take hold. Lena looked at the metal bar. There was a small, half-moon crack near the sugar bowl that she clearly recalled seeing the first time. It was right where it should be. "The truck outside?" Lena asked, leaning in. "Is it blue?" "A big rig." Alara moved her head just a tiny bit. "I did not see a truck, ma'am. Only yours." Lena turned to the glass. The parking lot was empty but for her truck. Then, as if she had called it forth, a dark blue big rig pulled into the lot, its lights cutting 2 lines through the thick fog. It was the same truck. The same time. The same things happening. "Give me the coffee," Lena said low. This time, as Alara held out the mug without a word, Lena saw the server's wrist. The skin, where it met the dress, looked oddly stiff, like old, dried hide pulled tight. Lena drank the coffee, paid the $4.50, and drove fast, her heart beating hard. She drove quicker this time, ignoring the rules, pushing the truck as hard as it would go. She drove for 3 full hours. She was sure of it. She passed known things. A rusty tall tower, a certain group of dead trees, and then, they were gone, swapped out for the black emptiness. And there it was again. The light. The red and yellow light. The all-night special. Lena did not stop this time. She hit the brakes, sliding the heavy truck on the dirt, and sat, staring through the glass. 3:17 a.m. The music box started, soft but fixed. "Oh, the road is long, and the sun is," then, the blue big rig pulled in. She watched the driver, a big man in a warm coat, get out, slam his door, and walk to the diner's front door. Lena knew she could not let him walk in. She could not let him be part of this. She pushed her door open and ran across the dirt. "Stop!" she yelled. The driver stopped, moving his head slowly. His face was in a deep shade, hidden by the wide bill of his cap. "Don't go in there," Lena gasped, holding her side. "You've been here. We've all been here. It's a loop. You will not leave." The man did not move. He just stared, a black, still shape against the yellow light of the door. Then, from inside the diner, Alara's voice, flat and calm, cut through the night air. "The late night stop is ready, dear." The driver turned and walked into the diner. Lena ran inside after him. He was already sitting at the bar, 3 seats down from where Lena had been. "I need to talk to you," Lena cried, grabbing his arm. When he turned to face her, Lena froze. His face was not in shadow. It was blank, not unclear, but smooth, unmade, like clay that was never given eyes, or a nose, just the faint shape of a jaw. He did not speak. He just lifted the cup Alara had placed for him. The coffee was pouring itself, filling the cup from the air. Elena was back at the cash desk, wiping a spot that was already clean. "Alara," Lena said, her voice shaking hard. "What is this spot? What time is it now, really?" The server stopped wiping. Her deep, set eyes finally looked at Lena, and a great sorrow, old and tired, broke through the smooth surface of her face. "It is always 3:17 a.m., ma'am," the server said low, her voice a dry breath from the floor. It is always the time before the very last time. She pointed to the far end of the bar, where an old news sheet was taped to the wall, dry and yellow. Lena walked over, her feet stepping on something like grit under the clean floor. The main words, dated October 19, 1968, yelled, "Bad end at 3:17 a.m. Local server, 2 truckers killed in roadside fire." The story told how a big truck full of gas had crashed right outside the all-night special, killing the late shift server and 2 men who were inside drinking coffee. "Oh, the road is long, and the sun is," Lena spoke the line, knowing it from the skipping music. It was Alara's best song, the server Elena said softly, coming closer. She hummed it when the blast hit the glass. The 2 men were laughing. They were happy. "But, you're Alara," Lena said, confused. "No, ma'am. My name is Elena." The server fixed her, and for the first time, her silver hair seemed to shine, showing small parts of soot and burn damage. Alara was the first one. She was the one who made the loop. She just wanted the 2 drivers to have their coffee before they had to go. And the drivers? Lena looked back at the big, blank man, who was now drinking from his cup. They wait. They drink. They are happy in the last 3 seconds of peace. Elena looked at Lena, her old eyes fixed on her. But the loop is frail. It needs things to hold it. New thoughts, new faces, to keep the record clean and the coffee hot. Lena looked down at the bar. The small, half-moon crack near the sugar bowl was closing up, the metal flowing back like water. The grit on the floor, the ash and glass, was being sucked back into a point in time. "You're pulling me in," Lena saw, fear closing her throat. "That's why I keep driving back. I'm the new server. The new person to die. You are part of the moment now," Elena said, her tone almost sorry. "You brought new things into the set time. If you leave, the road will just send you back to the moment you needed coffee the most." The big, blank trucker stood up, leaving his 450 on the bar. He gave a small, ghost-like nod to the shape of the trucker who had just pulled up outside. The 3rd trucker, the one Lena saw come in, was the one who was about to meet his end. Lena had to stop the loop. If the blast was the fixed moment, the cause was the truck outside. But she couldn't stop that truck. She looked at the music box, the source of the steady, crazy skip. "Oh, the road is long, and the sun is," the song was what held them. The song was the comfort that let the 3 souls live again and again in their final, calm moment. Grabbing a heavy, salt shaker from the bar, Lena spun and hit the glass front of the music box. Crack. The glass broke. The needle, the thin metal part, flew off the record. The music stopped. The quiet was loud, crushing the hum of the lights. Elena let out a sound like dry leaves caught in a storm. A high, fast sound of fear. The big trucker at the bar began to fall apart, his shape turning into gray dust. The perfect look of the diner began to twist. The red seats peeled back, showing old rot and rust. The metal turned black. The floor bent, and the wall holding the diner from the outside seemed to split open. Lena looked out the glass. The blue big rig was already a ball of fire. The quiet, soundless burst of a 50-year-old blast, held still in the air of time. The blank trucker who had just walked in was now standing at the door, mid-step, his body moving in waves of heat. He was not waiting for coffee now, he was waiting for the total end. Lena ran back to her truck, the air now thick with the smell of gas and burn. She started the engine, threw it into drive, and sped out of the lot, not caring where the road went, only that it led away. She drove until the sun came up, a welcome, bright orange line on the edge of the world, pushing back the made-up night. She drove until the static stopped and the radio played normal, awful pop songs. She made her drop off, slept for 12 hours, and drove again the next day, hundreds of miles in the other way, toward the sea, away from the flat, empty center land. But sometimes, when the light faded and the road signs became blurry shapes, she would catch the faint, far-off smell of fresh coffee on the wind. And sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, when the quiet was all there was, she would hear, coming from a spot just past her truck's lights, the ghost-like, broken echo of a favorite song. Oh, the road is long, and the sun is, skip. She never stopped driving after dark. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her deep inside, that somewhere on the black road ahead, waiting for the time of her worst tiredness, the sign would jump, and the all-night special would be ready to pour her last cup. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment and turn on notifications if you enjoyed the video so you never miss an upload.